So, Sam, I heard you mention earlier that suspenders are your trademark.
Yeah.
So as sweater vests were Rick Santorum.
Yeah, and he got that from me, by the way.
Did he?
So.
Oh, all right. So suspenders are the trademark. So
Right.
you got some wearing suspenders today. Tell me, why did you decide to run for U.S. Senate?
Well, I think that for me, my frustration has grown over the years with the idea that we've been asked by the establishment, people inside the Beltway, in both parties, to accept a particular standard or a particular type of politician that is supposed to represent us. And we're supposed to sit back and let them pat us on the head, feed us the pork that comes our way, and we're supposed to accept that and then be happy with that because they know better than we do how to run the government and how to run our lives. I don't accept that. I was never wired that way. I wasn't brought up that way. That hasn't been my life's experience. Hasn't been to that. And I really believe that I have, God blessed me with a lot of things, a lot of great skills. And anybody that ever hears me talk, they always hear me talk about that one more thing that you have to do. Well, this is my one more thing. This is why I think the country in Iowa is eager and starving for leadership. And that's something I think I can bring more than anyone else. You can't name anyone else in the state that's going to run for this office that will have the leadership skills that I have, or the breadth, the depth of knowledge, all the other issues that go with it.
Okay.
Just not there.
Well, tell us a little bit about your experience.
Well, I was raised in Kansas, went to the Air Force Academy and graduated with a degree in political science and a commission. I went to flight school and I flew fighters for 25 years, and I had a couple of other jobs in there. I worked in the prestigious Project Checkmate, which is a think tank for the Chief of Staff. Hand-picked officers come in and serve the chief, which is really a wonderful job. I was in the Middle East for 2 years, serving in the American Embassy over there during the end of the Kuwait occupation, or the end of the war, the Second Gulf War. Then I came back and I served in Colorado Springs at the United States Space Command and North American Aerospace Defense Command, and I was the Inspector General there. I went into business. I became an executive with Logicon and then with Northrop Grumman. I left that, went to work, got my doctorate, went to small college in Oskaloosa, spent 3 years there. Got called back to business because the money was too good, and got back to that.
So was that William Penn or
William
Menard?
Penn?
Okay.
William Penn. And I left William Penn, went back to work for Northrop Grumman for a little bit, Booz Allen for a little bit, and then went to work for the Homeland Security Institute, which was a marvelous experience. And then I came up to Sioux City and became the chair of the Department of Business and Economics at Morningside College.
Yeah, I'd never heard about the Homeland Security Institute until I read your bio.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. What did they do, and what was your role with them?
It came out of the legislation of 2002, the Homeland Security Act of 2002. And when the Department of Homeland Security was stood up in March of 2003, part of that legislation was to establish a think tank served directly to the department to deal with objective analysis for the Department of Homeland Security. I was hired as an analyst there, became a fellow, which was one of the most wonderful experiences of my life because academically and intellectually, I've been working, I still am. I still work on national preparedness issues. I'm a federalism scholar, and I still teach at the Naval Postgraduate School in the Department of Homeland Security's Executive Education Program.
Federalism. People still believe in federalism.
I believe in federalism. I'm a firm believer in federalism.
So what should that look like, or what types of legislation will you vote for when if you get elected to Senate, and what would you shoot down?
Well, I'll tell you what I'll vote against, and that's probably easier to say than what I do, because I will never vote for anything or support anything that brings additional costs or mandates to the states or business. We have on the books the Unfunded Mandate Reform Act of 1995 that was supposed to stop all of these unfunded mandate programs. I will never vote to increase subsidies because I believe in free markets, and subsidies need to go the way of the wooden nickel. We have 1,000 grant programs that cost taxpayers $660 billion a year. We have to figure out what that is. All those are pork projects that become codified, and we fund them forever. It's like Ronald Reagan said, the closest thing to eternal life in Washington is a federal program, and that's where we are. We got 2,100 subsidies out there that cost taxpayers $850 billion a year. That's a lot of market interference, and we need to get the government out of the market business and allow the markets to work.
Great. Tell me a little bit about what defines you. What are your core values?
I would say that first and foremost, I'm a devout Christian. I'm a Catholic that I was raised in evangelical and converted to Catholicism.
I'd be interested in that conversation.
Not for today, but it's interesting, and I don't mind telling it. I was a typical convert, a zealot, and then I moved away from it, and I'm returning. I've been on this journey to return to my faith. So first and foremost, I'm a Christian, and my faith is fundamental to everything I do. It guides everything. It structures everything. It structures my moral code. It structures my sense of integrity and all of those other factors. Because without that, a person with no moral center is adrift and is frankly a dangerous person. Second, I'm a Foursquare conservative. I'm a Russell Kirk, Bill Buckley conservative.
You're going to probably have to define that for some of us.
I know, and I will, exactly, because what that means is I believe in the four pillars of conservatism: the Constitution, fiscal responsibility, national security, and cultural values. That's the four pillars.
Okay.
And you're right. That's a little esoteric.
I know what you're talking about.
I know. Not everybody does. Yeah. So those guide and structure my thought. I believe in the four American strengths, and this is my own mantra: individual liberty, the primacy or the protection of the traditional nuclear family, and I mean traditional by one man, one woman, brought together in sacrament and bring forth children. I believe in the primacy of faith. Faith must be protected. It's a First Amendment right, and we shouldn't be pigeonholed into a worship issue as opposed to a religion issue, and that's where we are.
That's a good distinction. So
it is.
To talk a little bit about that distinction, because we hear the Obama administration talk about freedom of worship a lot, but
they're trying to change the dialectic, and if they change the dialogue, if they change the terms, and we let them, then we fall prey to that. Because right now, you're exactly right. The administration is focused directly on trying to get us to think about the right to worship, which is that 1 hour a day for most people, that they're 1 hour a week that they go to chapel or temple or cathedral, and the rest of it is you're not entitled to that. You're not entitled to any protections on that, which is exactly wrong, because you're entitled to protection of your religion 24/7, 365. Religion is about you. It's about your relationship with God. It's about the enormity. It's about how you fit into the continuum of the universe. And to think that some bureaucrat has a better sense of my values than I do is nonsense, and worse, it's evil.
Okay. So what, if you were in the Senate, what types of legislation would you work towards, to preserve that right?
First off,
do we even need legislation?
There are a lot of things I think belong in the states, and I think this is sometimes because if I'm going to be intellectually honest and I believe in federalism, I think there are many things that ought to be left to the states, and a lot of issues of life choices, as far as abortion goes, sometimes that ought to be left to the states. The marriage issue is probably best left to the states. But my sense of this is, and I want to talk specifically about abortion.
Okay.
We are in the 40th year of Roe v. Wade this year. We have just celebrated the 40th anniversary of Roe v. Wade. If you can read that opinion, and I have, it is convoluted, it's tortured, it's a horrible thing. They make stuff up, and it really gets to this. But the essence of their argument is that abortion is a privacy issue. It's about privacy. If that is in fact true, let's follow that to its intellectual conclusion.
Yeah.
If it's private, then it ought to be paid for by private funds. Therefore, I will never support, nor will I ever vote for, anything that allows public money to go to any private organization or nonprofit that supports abortion, and that includes Planned Parenthood. I will not.
Okay. All right.
I'm telling you about a lot of negative stuff here. I haven't told you much about what I will do.
So what is your positive agenda?
Well, the positive agenda is increase the military readiness. That's one of the first things. I believe in a fair tax.
Okay.
Because it gets rid of the necessity for the IRS, cut corporate taxes by down to 10%, bring jobs back to the country, repatriate all that money. The positive agenda there is because it unleashes the entrepreneur, it unleashes the market. I believe in energy independence, and that's an all of the above thing. I don't think we ought to, limit ourselves or allow ourselves to be held hostage by foreign governments on this whole notion of this. We need to protect our veterans. We need to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which is an abomination, by the way. We need to get rid of Dodd-Frank, which is an abomination. Because all of these things lead to crony capitalism, and they all lead to this concentration of industry that costs you and me money. It's our money, Shane. It's not the government's money. And this is one of those things that I think is that we're not looking at. The other is to return as much power to the states as possible. One of the things that I said I would always do, no matter what happens and a bill comes to the floor of the United States Senate, and I'm in that chamber, I will demand from the leadership of either party, regardless of majority, I will demand where in the Constitution is this authorized. And if it is not authorized in the Constitution, I will not vote for it. I will not support it. And I think this needs to be called to attention. Fred Thompson tried for 12 years when he was in the Senate to do that very thing. And Fred's a great conservative, and I think that's all necessary there. The other is I think we need to do everything we can to protect the family. And this means we need to provide them the protections that allow them to grow their families, to do things, and the best way to do that is with a strong economy, because then that way families, and also it incentivizes better relationships and all of that. One of the key issues that we have to face is school reform. I know you don't have anything to do with that. But
gee, I don't even need to bring it up.
Well, I want to tell you, I'm with you cheek by jowl on this elimination of the Common Core. It is the worst thing that's ever happened. We ought to repeal No Child Left Behind. All choices, or I should say most choices in education, should be between the child, the parent, and the school at the local level. We have anybody that thinks the national government is the best place to go for educational advice has got it exactly wrong. The other thing is when it comes to homeschooling. Homeschooling is a complement to the current system we have. It is not a detractor. It is not an assault. It is not a negative on all these things. Homeschoolers, I think, and I tell everybody, I teach college classes. The best kids I've ever had in my classes are homeschool kids. Followed second by kids that go to Catholic schools, and then kids that go to private schools, and then the public educated kids, which is the bulk of them.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of preparation. It's a matter of their ability. Even their social skills are better because they're more attentive. They're there and they pay attention, and they're not distracted by too many things. So all of these things are important. And right now we got it exactly backwards.
Okay.
We got it exactly backwards.
So basically,
I'm talking like a politician. Aren't I?
Yeah, you are. See, you're off the right, off on the right foot here. With education, eliminate Common Core. Unfortunately, Congress never voted on that. So.
No, this is made up out of whole cloth, and we have 45 states that have accepted this.
Yeah.
Finally, people are waking up to this, and thanks to people like you and Glenn Beck and a lot of the rest of us, it rattled my cage, and because I read your stuff all the time. I said I didn't know anything about it. So I called up one of my favorite legislators, and I said, do you know anything about, an Iowa legislator? I said, do you know anything about this? He said, well, no. I said, you're in the education committee.
Yeah.
How come you don't know? I said, I'm going to find out. And sure enough, our dialogue is in, and now he is the one leading the fight to get rid of the Common Core in Iowa.
Good. Yeah, we've got several legislators that are on fire to do something next year.
This is nonsense. It's utter nonsense.
So would you push for not the repeal, but the elimination of the Federal Department of Education?
I think there are some things the Department of Education does that they do extremely well.
Okay.
When it comes to special needs children, if we did not have a Federal Department of Education, those children's civil rights would be in jeopardy. And the only reason I say that is because I have personal experience with this.
Okay.
I have a special needs child at home. Shar and I have, we always have to be out there plugging away and fighting. And it's the one area where I think that they have done, and because we've been personally involved, they have done a marvelous job. Now, civil rights protection doesn't necessarily have to belong in the Department of Education. It could easily move over to the Department of Justice, and then subsequently you could get rid of the Department of Education. Notionally.
Yeah, it seemed like before 1976, education didn't exist for some reason.
Well, actually, the Department of Education has been around since the 1860s. It has, and a lot of people don't know that. I mean, we've had a Department of Education since the 1860s.
It just wrapped up into different departments.
Yeah.
Okay. I learned something new every day. Forget about 10 things, but I learned something new.
You're not old enough to forget stuff like that.
Let's see. Oh, back to some of your positive agenda here. Military readiness. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, I think one of the things that we're going through right now is sequester, the whole, the mechanics of sequester. What that means is we cut the budget by, several dozen millions of dollars, not much. I mean, 2.5% of the budget. But half of that has to come out of defense over the next 10 years. What the deal that was struck was to hold defense hostage because everybody knows it's a hot button issue. My view is that you can cut defense because they have a very large budget, $665 billion, I think, this year. They have a very large budget, but what a lot of it is spent on is people, for one, and then again, equipment. Modernization is an important issue, but more than anything, training and readiness is by far the most important thing. Okay. Because you can take old equipment, if you've got somebody that knows how to use it and knows how to use it well, you're a fighting force that is to be reckoned with. And frankly, nobody in the world has equipment as good as ours or as modern as ours, even though we have old airplanes a lot. Because what this comes down to is special interest. And I don't mind saying it. The services are always out there banging for something new. I mean, the Air Force wants the new F-35 and the F-22. The Navy wants new ships. The Army wants new armored vehicles and artillery. Everybody wants something. But what we don't get is what's in the best interest of the country. And I would much rather have my soldier out there in a up-armored Humvee with all the bells and whistles on it and trained to be a fighting machine than sitting here worried about the fact he's got a brand new vehicle, but he's only been in it 3 times before he goes into combat. That's pretty stark, but that's really what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Military readiness is critical. I've been through this twice. Drawdown of Vietnam and then the drawdown of Goldwater Nichols. And we stuck to our guns on readiness, and it has paid for itself over and over again because it saves American lives, and that's really what it's all about.
Okay. As far as, I'm just thinking of some of the things we're facing with the Congress today. First of all, we got this news came out. Obviously, it was released or leaked that the NSA has been spying on us. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I just got off of Jan Michelson's show, and Jan, of course, always lays the traps for you there, and you've asked it very politely, I might add. So I have the leaks associated with spying on American citizens is appropriate, and we need, because clearly we have no oversight. And Congress ought to be embarrassed that they don't know this and they're not protecting the American people. As far as the exposing of intelligence sources, if we followed warrants, we did the appropriate things, and we were collecting data on foreigners that were probable cause, Fourth Amendment, then that was wrong. This kid revealing that was not right. But revealing the fact that we were spying on Americans was not only appropriate, it was his duty. And I'll stick to that.
Okay. So do we need to continue on with FISA courts?
But FISA, again, you got to separate the two. The FISA courts, the way it's written, if you deal with FISA and it's based on suspicion or probable cause, and you can attach yourself to foreign, where you think dangerous entities, that's perfectly fine, and that's what the Patriot Act was about. It was very narrowly crafted, particularly the second time it was supported. The other part of this is the abuse of that.
Yeah.
This is where we are. We have abused the FISA laws and abused because right now we have warrantless collection on millions of Americans. And that's flat wrong. It's against the Constitution. It's against the law. And so this is where I think people need to know this. And I'm telling you, if people aren't upset about this, they're not paying attention. Because there's no reason the government of the United States should know that much about its citizens. No reason whatsoever.
Okay. Is there anything with the Patriot Act that you think we should get rid of?
Well, honestly, I think that we ought to scrap the Patriot Act and go back and start over. Again, I supported the Patriot Act when it was first signed because I had read it. That's a shocker.
You're probably unlike most
Americans, I had in fact read it, and I was okay as long as it was narrowly focused and narrowly controlled and narrowly defined. That was the promise that was made to us because we were in Homeland Security. We were dealing with a lot of these very issues. What has happened subsequently has been horrible, and this is where we have abused that. And this is the thing civil libertarians like me were always concerned about with FISA, was that it would be abused. We cautioned against it, we warned against it. We said if this was not controlled and oversight was not done appropriately, this would end up being one of the greatest travesties in American history because it would literally destroy America. Because I think it has. I think when you do something like this, you're attacking the fundamentals of what being an American is about.
Okay. Is the war on terror over?
No, and this is, again, we need to call it what it is. It's not a war on Islam. It's a war on people who hate America. They happen to mutate I lived in Muslim countries, and the people that I have associated with, the practitioners of Islam, are wonderful, beautiful people. Their faith is their faith, and they're profoundly driven by that faith. It is a radical element of that, driven by other things, and power is usually what it is. And this radicalization of Islam is what we really need to face, because it is a real enemy. It's not an enemy just to us, not to freedom people. It is an enemy to Islam. And this is the thing that I've never been able to grasp, is why the people of the Muslim faith, who are wonderful practitioners, a billion of them around the world, why are they not outraged that someone has taken their religion and twisted it into something so bad and so horrible? And frankly, I don't. That's the one part I don't understand.
Okay. Should we be involved with Syria right now?
No.
What's going on there?
No,
Okay.
because why would we want to go in and deal with somebody who's associated with Al Qaeda? I'm just asking. I know it's a rhetorical question, but what would we be thinking? I mean, why would we go in and create yet another bastion for terrorism training? And what in the world are we thinking? Bashar Assad is a bad man. He's an evil person, but he's not Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda is ultimately. I mean, that's the ultimate enemy right there.
Sure.
And what about Libya? We got involved there, and who kills our ambassador? Al Qaeda, Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, and we give them billions.
I thought it was a video of that.
Don't even get me started. So, no, I don't have any passion about these issues at all. So,
No, I couldn't.
Can't tell.
But, let's see. Back to the homeland here,
Yeah.
as far as domestic issues.
Yeah.
You mentioned get rid of, affordable
Affordable Care
health,
Act.
Care Act and Obamacare.
The Unaffordable Care Act.
Yeah. Now, there's they'll say repeal and replace. Do you agree with replace?
No, because that implies that you're going to go in there and tinker with it.
Okay.
I think you repeal it and then you start over.
Okay.
And the start over one of the first things you have to do is to remove all the barriers between the doctors and the patient. And one of the ways you do that is allow true interstate commerce to take place, and this is where you allow people to go out and buy insurance across state lines. It means repeal of McCarran-Ferguson and some of those other things. But that's really the start. The second part is, if you want to reduce costs, have tort reform and encourage tort reform across the states. Again, this is a federalism issue. I'm not sure that it needs to be written in the federal code that you have tort limits, but I think you certainly ought to incentivize states to do this. And you don't have to do it with money. You just do it with the idea that there are paths to glory here that are available to them. And you find states that are doing it: Alabama, Georgia, Texas. And what's happening in those states? Those states are growing. They're attracting doctors. They're attracting people. And they're gaining congressional districts. And this is something that we have got to face, that when we have something as bad as this, what's driving our costs through the roof, and it's going to keep you from being able to send your kids to the college you want to. It's going to take me. I can't go out and buy the new car I want when I need it. When I need it, not when I want it, when I need it. I'm not going to be able to do the things I need to do because I'm not going to have the money. We're not even talking about want to do's. We're talking about need to do's.
Sure.
And this cost of this thing, 2 years ago, no, 3 years ago, 2010, I had just come on the radio and up there, and I was asked, what do you think about it? I had read the Affordable Care Act. I may have been one of 5 Americans that had actually read it. Myself and Betsy McCoy and 3 other people. And I had done a back-of-the-envelope cost analysis. This is what I do for a living. I did a cost analysis on the Affordable Care Act. I told everybody that would listen to me, I said, this Affordable Care Act is going to cost at least $2.6 trillion, and not the $1 trillion that they're talking about, and it may increase even more. Today, we are north of $2.7 trillion, and it looks like the final tally for the first 10 years may be $4 trillion. And I'm telling you, if a college professor in Sioux City, Iowa, can sit down with a pen and a notepad and figure that out, somebody in Washington, D.C. ought to be able to figure that out.
You'd think.
You'd think.
Yeah. The Senate yesterday had a cloture vote on immigration reform. What are your thoughts on immigration reform?
I've done a lot of research on it. I've got papers written on immigration reform. In fact, I've worked with the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, providing them all kinds of documentation on the implementation of then McCain-Kennedy. This bill is kind of McCain-Kennedy on steroids, and I'll explain that. John McCain and Ted Kennedy in 2005 had crafted an immigration reform bill that had, guess what, increased border security, increased E-Verify. So essentially, this bill is the same. The thing about it, that bill was that it was truly in McCain-Kennedy that any registration or amnesty would come after all these other things had been done. This bill is the worst bill possible, because what it says is all you need to have is a plan to secure the border, and that's not protecting national sovereignty. This is purely, there are 2 issues here, and American people ought to be mad about both. One is this is the continuation of corporate America asking us to subsidize a cheap labor force, and the other part of this is a sop to the progressives to create another 11 million voters for them. And both of those are wrong. Sovereignty is about protecting our national borders. It is about, there's no point. If you don't have secure borders, there's no point in calling yourself a country. You might as well not call yourself a country. And then there are no incentives for assimilation. Then there's no protection of your economy. Because now we have special interest in industry and all these other entities out here controlling business, and our labor force is skewed, and it distorts our labor force. All of these things are part and parcel of that. And worse, one of the worst things about this is they're not going to enforce the public charge elements of current immigration law. Public charge means you can't come to this country or you can't be in this country if you're going to be on the public welfare.
Okay.
And they're going to do away with that. And so we are going to see, now here's the math. Let's assume there are 11 million illegal immigrants in this country. 11 million. Today, those 11 million illegal immigrants cost mostly state and local governments $110 billion a year. Now, in public safety, public education, public health. Overnight, if they're registered, made legal, given amnesty, and public charge is not enforced, overnight, they become eligible for 80 means-tested programs. They become eligible for all other forms of government support. Overnight, that bill triples to $330 billion a year. All of it, most of it visited on state and local governments. How are we going to pay for that?
Yeah.
How are we going to pay for that? It's frankly, it's immoral. This bill is immoral in the fact of what it imposes on the American people.
So what kind of immigration reform should we be working towards?
I think that there are a lot of things in this bill that I would agree with, and if they were put into a different order.
Okay.
First and foremost, that you must secure the borders and ports of the United States. There ought to be a lockdown for about 4 years. You ought to enforce E-Verify. And
When you say lockdown, what do you mean?
I mean nobody gets in.
Okay.
No. Legal immigration still, and we still have those things, and we can streamline that and make it more labor-based as opposed to social-based, and get rid of chain migration. Chain migration means if you're legal in this country, then you can sponsor anyone to come into the country. So it creates a chain.
Okay.
So every legal person then can sponsor someone else. Everything ought to be based on labor requirements, but secure the borders and ports. Use E-Verify. That's expensive. One of the things about this bill, and I've talked to legislators already, I told them, I said, bill is about 1/20th of the funding that's needed for this. 1/20th, because to move E-Verify out is going to cost about $20 billion to do that, in my estimation. If we do that, then we use the IRS, we still have it, and the Social Security Administration to check tax records and ID. If we have discrepancies, like this was supposed to work back when it was first done, then we report those to the employers. Then the employers have X number of days to resolve those issues. What we find is, if the person has used fraudulent identification, that is a federal felony. That person needs to be found, and they need to be deported, because they have violated, not only have violated the law coming into the country illegally, they have used false identification or created a fraudulent position, and that should be enough reason to deport them. And I really believe this, because I don't think anyone should benefit from breaking the law. Then, after you've gone through this process, and there will be several million people left, because we have a lot of people who are in this country illegally that honestly are working their tails off. They're good people and they're working hard. And whether we cannot deport them, we have to find a way to bring them into our system, but we also have to make sure that they truly do go to the back of the line.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that I'm not so sure they should ever gain citizenship. I think legal residency is fine, but because they're here illegal. Now, if they're here and we establish legal residency and they go through the process, if they return to their home country and then come back and they start through that process, then I think they've gone. It's like they've gone home and touched base, and now they get to come back. Then they get the process to citizenship. But I don't think they should be entitled to citizenship just because they've been here a long time.
Okay.
That's a pretty long answer, Shane.
No, that's fine. I appreciate it. Wanted to touch back on something you said earlier regarding social issues.
Right.
Being a Federalist, do you think
right.